The story of three brothers, men who, until a chance encounter on a forgotten road, could make no sense of themselves or the world around them. Sometimes what you're searching for doesn't find you when you set out. It finds you when you stop to catch your breath, or in the very moment you've given up hope entirely. All that matters is that your intentions are honest and your heart is open. Let's see where the intentions and fates of our three brothers lead. Long ago, in the forgotten corner of a vast and restless land, there sat a small town called Drywood Creek. The name said it all. Rain seemed to skip over it entirely. The soil cracked in summer and froze without mercy in winter, and the people who lived there had long since stopped expecting anything different. In this town lived three brothers whose fortunes were written in the same hard ground. The eldest was Thomas, broad shouldered, loud, the kind of man who filled a room without trying. His heart was generous, genuinely so. But it ran hot. He spoke before he thought, and when anger took him, his words could cut like a blade. Patience was a language he'd never learned. The middle brother, Edmund, was his opposite in every way. Lean, quiet, perpetually anxious. He second guessed everything, every choice, every step, every word before he spoke it. By the time he'd finished weighing his options, life had usually moved on without him. Worry had settled so deep into his face it looked permanent. The youngest was William. He was the still one, the quiet one, the one whose eyes always seemed to be fixed on something the others couldn't see. He listened far more than he spoke, but when he did speak, every word landed with a weight that made people stop and think, as though something deeper than him was doing the talking. The three brothers shared a house that had never known the sound of children laughing, and a table that had never quite held enough. Poverty sat on their shoulders heavier than any coat. By day they worked other men's land for whatever the landowner felt like paying. By evening they gathered under the old elm at the edge of town. They watched the sun go down over the distant hills and saw in those last long shadows nothing but a mirror of their own exhaustion. No voices, no laughter, just the insects and that particular rural silence that doesn't soothe, it presses. One evening, Thomas's patience gave out entirely. He hurled the stick into the dirt and rose to his feet like a man who's decided he's done sitting. Enough, he said. Brothers, this can't go on. This silence, this waiting, it's going to bury us alive. You've heard the old stories. There's the wanderer, a wise man who appears to those who truly need him. People who call out with honest hearts. Let's stop crying over what we don't have. Let's get on the road. Let's find him. Let's tell him what our lives look like. Edmund shook his head, turning a dry weed over in his hands. Thomas, it's a fine idea, but let's not chase shadows. Who's actually seen this wanderer? Who's found him? Might just be a story people tell to feel better. We head out, we fall apart on the road, we come back worse off than we left. William had been sitting with his eyes closed. He opened them slowly, first to the last light in the sky, then to his brothers' faces. Edmund, he said quietly but without hesitation, tell me what we have to lose. The land doesn't give. The house is cold. Sitting here waiting for things to change on their own isn't living. It's fading. I'd rather walk towards something and come up empty than rot in place. And who knows, maybe we don't come up empty. William's words lit something in Thomas and quieted something in Edmund. In each of the three brothers, a small and stubborn flicker of hope took hold, the way a weed pushes through cracked pavement because it simply doesn't know any better. They left before dawn the next morning. Their mother and Edmund's wife stood in the doorway with wet eyes, pressing into their hands what little there was: a loaf of bread, some dried meat, a small wedge of hard cheese. The goodbye was wordless. Some moments don't have the right words. The brothers left Drywood Creek behind and walked into the open. The early days were kind. Rolling green hills, birdsong, the smell of clover in the morning air. Their hope was fresh and their feet were light. Around evening fires, they talked about what they'd ask for if they found the wanderer. Thomas was expansive. I've always felt like something is broken in the way the world works, and I can't see what. I want understanding, real understanding, not facts from a book, but the kind that helps you read people, read situations, see what others miss. I want to be someone who can explain life to those who are lost in it. Edmund was practical. Mine's simpler. I just want my kids to have enough to eat. I want to stop dreading the end of the month. A little security, that's all I'm after. William just smiled. Mine's private. I'll say it when the time comes. The days became weeks. The green hills gave way to dry, stony plains. The sun hammered down by day, the nights turned cold. Food ran low. They walked mostly in silence now because tiredness had used up most of their words. Then, on the day when hope had thinned to almost nothing and their legs could barely carry them, they saw a figure ahead on the road. As they drew closer, they made out an old man resting in the shade of a lone tree. White-bearded, worn traveling clothes, a walking stick resting against his knee. But what struck them wasn't his age, it was his eyes. They held something that's hard to name, not just wisdom, more like the look of someone who sees you completely and judges you not at all. The old man rose as they approached and walked to meet them. His voice was unhurried, like water over smooth stone. Peace to you, weary travelers. Long road in this heat. I can see you're tired, and not just in your feet. What is it that drives three men down a road like this? The brothers hesitated. The road had taught them caution with strangers. Thomas wavered. Edmund studied the old man with suspicion. But William felt something shift in his chest. A warmth, like recognizing a face you weren't expecting to see. He stepped forward and nodded respectfully. "Good afternoon, sir. We're three brothers from Drywood Creek. Poverty and a kind of despair drove us out. We've been looking for someone, a man they call the Wanderer. They say he appears to those who need him, if they're sincere about it. We wanted to tell him about our lives, ask for his counsel." The old man smiled, the kind of smile that reads a room better than any question. "And what would you do with the Wanderer if you found him? What would actually change?" Thomas spoke up, his voice still carrying authority despite the exhaustion. "Get out from under poverty, feed our children, find a purpose in this life, live like it means something." The old man was quiet for a moment, then simply, "Then tell me what you need, because the Wanderer you've been looking for, you found him." The three brothers went still. Then they looked at each other and back at the unremarkable old man in front of them. Dusty boots, plain coat. This was him? Edmund whispered. "That can't be right." William gripped both brothers by the arm. "Thomas, Edmund, was our intention honest? Did we come out here in good faith? Maybe this is exactly how he appears. Not in robes and ceremony, but on a back road, looking like anyone else. We have nothing to lose. We walked all this way for this moment." The brothers steadied themselves. They bowed their heads. Thomas stepped forward first. It was always going to be Thomas. "Sir," he began, voice tight with emotion and exhaustion, "we've lived our whole lives in the dark. We don't know why the land fails us, why it feels like our prayers disappear into the air, why things are the way they are. I'm asking for understanding, not facts, wisdom, the kind that lets you see how things actually work. I want to be able to walk into a room full of people who are lost and help them find their way. I want to light a candle in the dark for people who've forgotten what the light looks like." The Wanderer looked at him for a long time, the way you look at water when you're trying to gauge the depth. "Thomas, that's a worthy thing to want, but understand this. Knowledge is a sharp tool. In careful hands, it protects. In hasty ones, it wounds. It grows when it's shared and rots when it's hoarded. If I give you this, will you be a jealous gatekeeper of it, or a gardener who grows new seeds from what he's been given? Will you swear to me, here and now, that anyone who comes to you in darkness will find light, and that you'll leave behind people who carry that light after you're gone?" Thomas didn't hesitate. He dropped to one knee. "I swear it. As long as I'm breathing, my door is open to anyone who's searching. If I ever hoard what I've been given, let the ground open and take me." The Wanderer reached into his coat and drew out a dry, ordinary leaf, the kind that falls from any tree on any autumn day. He held it out. "Take this. In it lives the wisdom of what has passed, the understanding of what is, and the seed of what could be. As long as your intention holds and your promise stays alive, this leaf will open doors that others cannot see. Thomas took it with trembling hands and pressed it to his chest. Edmund came forward next, uncertain, as always, eyes on the ground. His voice was low and worn. "I'm not asking for anything as grand as my brother, sir. I'm a simple man. When my children look at me hungry, something breaks in me. Cold winters without enough wood, summers without enough shade. I want my family to be secure. Not rich, just not afraid. Enough that I'm not a burden and I can be a help to someone else." The wanderer's expression shifted, more serious now, more searching. "Edmund, money is a coat of fire. It either elevates a man or it destroys him. Wealth has a way of burning out the memory of what it felt like to go without. What guarantee do I have that when comfort comes, you won't forget what hunger looked like? Will you swear that what you gain won't become a wall between you and others, that it becomes a bridge instead?" Edmund raised his eyes, and for the first time in a long time, the anxiety was gone from them, replaced by something steadier. "I swear it. Everything I earn, I share. If I forget, let it choke me." The wanderer opened his palm. In it sat an old coin, copper, worn smooth at the edges, clearly ancient. He placed it in Edmund's hand. "This is the seed of your intention. Water it with honesty, tend it with generosity, and it will grow into something lasting. But remember, the shade it gives must fall on more than you alone." Edmund stared at the coin. A flicker of disappointment, then the weight of what the wanderer had said made the coin feel heavier than gold. Last came William, as quietly as he did everything. His eyes weren't on the coin or the leaf. They were somewhere else, somewhere back home, in the empty rooms of a house that had never quite felt like one. "Sir," he said softly, "I'm not asking for knowledge or money. My house has no voice in it. When I close the door at night, what meets me is a silence that doesn't comfort. I've spent years longing for the warmth of someone beside me, a fire that doesn't go out, children's laughter between four walls. I want a family, a good woman to share my life with, a home that feels like one." The wanderer was quiet for a long moment. When he looked at William, his face was softer than it had been with either brother. "William, you are asking for the hardest thing and the most valuable. Knowledge lives in books, money lives in banks, but peace and love only live in the space between two people who choose each other. I can't hand that to you like an object, but I can point you toward the path. When you get home 2 streets from your house, there is a woman who makes her living as a seamstress. She is honest and she is good. Your path and hers are meant to cross. Go to her with an open heart. Let her know your intentions. After that, your hearts will know what to do." He gave William nothing to hold, no leaf, no coin. What he gave him was worth more than either. The wanderer looked at all three of them one last time. "May your intentions be your compass," he said, and turned and walked away. His steps seemed too light for the ground beneath them. Within moments his figure dissolved into the afternoon haze, as quietly as he had come. The three brothers stood in the empty road. They held their new fates in their hands and in their chests. They stood in silence for a while. Then they turned for home. The return journey was nothing like the road out. No complaints, no daydreams, only the weight of what they'd been told and the urgency to get back and begin. The wanderer's words came true, one by one. That same night, Thomas picked up an old book that had sat untouched on a shelf since their grandfather's time. Something was different. The words opened up. Meanings unfolded behind meanings, like rooms behind rooms. Word spread. People started coming from neighboring towns. "There's a man in Drywood Creek who can explain the things you've been carrying alone." Thomas turned no one away. Edmund spent the coin at market on the sorriest, most sickly calf anyone had ever seen. People laughed at him, but he remembered his promise. He nursed the animal with patience and honesty, just as the wanderer had said. The calf recovered. The next spring it produced twins. Edmund kept his word with every gain, gave a portion away before he touched the rest, stayed honest when dishonesty would have been easy. His herd grew, his reputation grew with it. In time, he became known across the county, not for being rich, but for being trustworthy. He stood up, face flushed. A spring? You come in here dressed like that and you talk to me about springs? He crossed to his desk, threw open a small carved box, pulled out the dry leaf, the leaf he had once pressed to his chest with trembling hands, and flung it at the young man's face. I became what I am from one leaf. Here's a leaf for you. Now get out. Don't come back. The leaf drifted down and settled at the young man's feet. The wanderer looked at it, then looked at Thomas, said nothing, turned and walked out. He came to Edmund as a beggar, ragged, shaking, barely holding himself up against the iron gate of Edmund's fine house. He asked for bread, just bread, in a voice that had given up expecting to receive it. Edmund was in the garden hosting a dinner party. The clink of glasses, easy laughter, a well-set table in the late evening light. He spotted the beggar at the gate and his expression darkened. He leaned toward a servant. Again? I told you people, I don't want that sort at my gate. Get rid of him. Then he caught himself. Guests were watching. He reached into his pocket, found the old copper coin, the very one he'd kept all these years, and dropped it from the window into the dirt below. There, and don't come back. The coin hit the dust. The wanderer looked at it, then looked up at Edmund in the window. There was no pleading in that look, no anger, just a quiet, settled sorrow, the kind that doesn't argue because it already knows. Edmund turned away. He came to William last, as an old traveler, bent and slow, arriving at dusk. He knocked on the low door of William's modest house. It opened immediately. William and his wife together. One look at the exhausted old man in front of them, and they both stepped back, not away from him, but to make room. Come in, come in! Where have you come from? Sit down. I've lost my way, son, the wanderer said quietly. I'm hungry, cold. Is there any chance of a place to sleep? William and his wife exchanged one glance, the kind that married people use instead of sentences, and opened the door wider. Our home is yours. Come in. We'll get you warm. His wife went to the kitchen without being asked. William went to a chest and brought out a clean shirt and his warmest jacket. Change into these. Rest. At the table, they shared everything they had, the food, the conversation, the warmth of the fire. The children were shy at first, then climbed onto the old man's lap. There was no performance of generosity in this house, no calculation, just the plain and easy goodness of people who had never stopped being exactly who they were. The wanderer sat by the fire, eating simple food, watching these faces, and saw it clearly. William had made no formal promise. He had simply never stopped being a decent man. That was the only promise that mattered. They made up a bed for him. In the morning, he was gone before anyone woke. The wanderer had his answer. 2 seeds had rotted, 1 had grown, without fanfare, without an audience, the way good things tend to grow. The reckoning came quietly, as reckonings often do. Thomas woke the next morning with a stone in his chest. The young man's face wouldn't leave him. He went to his library, his sanctuary, the place that had always made sense of the world. But something was wrong. The walls felt close. The books looked back at him like strangers. He pulled out his favorite volume, the one he could have quoted from memory, and opened it. The words fell apart. Meanings he'd lived inside for years were simply gone, like furniture removed from a familiar room. A student came in with a simple question. Thomas opened his mouth. Nothing came out. And then it hit him, all at once, like a cold wave. The dusty road, the leaf pressed to his chest, the promise made on one knee, and then the same leaf thrown in fury at a young man's face. The wanderer had taken back what he'd lent. The great teacher stood alone in his magnificent library, surrounded by thousands of books he could no longer read, and understood, too late, what he had thrown away. That same night, a fire started in Edmund's house. No one ever knew exactly how. A lamp, maybe. A forgotten candle. It began small, in the back room, and by midnight the whole house was burning. Edmund ran out in his nightclothes and stood in the yard watching everything he'd accumulated over the years. Not all of it earned honestly, not all of it shared as promised, go up in bright, indifferent flames. By morning there was nothing left but scorched walls and ash. Edmund stood in the rubble exactly where he'd been all those years ago, with nothing. Only now there was no wanderer to meet on a back road and no second chance waiting at the end of it. And in William's house, morning came in gently. His wife was straightening the room where their guest had slept when she lifted the pillow. There, on the bare wooden boards beneath it, were two things: a dry leaf and an old copper coin, worn smooth at the edges. She called for William. They stood over them, and without a word passing between them, they understood. They had offered nothing, expecting anything in return. They had simply opened the door. William picked up the leaf. Something opened in his mind, clear and deep, like water from a source you didn't know was there. His wife closed her hand around the coin and felt her chest fill with something that wanted to pour out. Toward the neighbors, the sick, the lonely ones, the ones no one else was looking at. The wanderer had given them what he had taken from the others, not as reward, as trust. Let your intentions be your compass. Knowledge shared with love returns tenfold. Wealth held with honesty doesn't run dry. And a home that opens its door to a tired stranger will never stay empty for long. The end.